Good day everybody, my name is Daniel and in today's lesson we're going to be going through functions. So what are functions? Functions are a simple way in which we can reuse some of the code that we write. So by now you can understand and you can see how programs can get very long and tedious and very difficult to maintain if you write a lot of code, right? Especially if you're reusing a lot of the same code that you write, right? Say you're reusing variables, you're reusing for loops and while loops and other things, right? So functions make an easy way for us to just take a piece of code that we write, put it in a box and store it away. And then whenever we want information from that box, we can just take that box and just shake it and then get whatever output that we want. We can keep using that little box instead of having to rewrite the same code over and over and over again to get the same results. So I'm going to give a demonstration. So now an example here would be, let's just write a program that asks a user their name and then outputs the information to the screen. We're going to write that little program and then we're going to demonstrate how functions come into play and make our lives easier. Okay, so create a new file, new project, and create a new C++ program. Okay, project, a console application. And then once you've done that, let's start writing. So I'm going to declare a string. I've already included it up here. I'm going to say string name, and I'm going to say cout, please enter your name, right? End line. And then I'm going to say cin, I'm going to say name, and then I'm going to cout and say hello name. Okay, that's a very simple program to demonstrate that it works. Let's just run this, and it says enter your name. I'm going to say Daniel. You guys can see that. Enter your name, Daniel. I'm going to press enter and it says hello Daniel. Very easy, very simple. Okay, you've done this multiple times before. Now why would we want to use a function for something like this? Now imagine a world or a program where you needed to keep asking the user to enter their name. Maybe there are a lot of people that need to enter information into the system. What you would need to do is you would need to copy this and keep pasting it, pasting, and in some instances changing certain things, right? Now instead of doing this, further increasing the complexity of our program or just making reading the program very difficult, instead what we can do is we can just put everything into a function. So I'm going to get rid of this and we're going to create a function. Okay, so up here at the top of your main, just write this with me. Okay, void. I'll explain what void is in a second. So for now, just write it, and then let's write greeting. So that's the name of our function, and then we're going to have braces, and then we're going to have curly braces. So just like the structure of this main function right here, our greeting function has the same structure. Okay, you have the name of the function, you have the braces, and then you have the curly braces, and then you have something called void in the front of it. I'll explain in a second, but for now what we're going to do is that instead of having all this information here, we're going to copy everything. I'm going to copy all of this and I'm going to paste it inside of greeting. Okay, so basically that entire program that we wrote is now inside of this greeting parameter right here, like inside of the scope. Okay, so now, okay, then what? If I run this program, nothing will happen, right? Because our main function, remember, our main function is basically everything that happens in the program. So if it's empty, nothing will happen, even if you have a lot of code above it or below it. Now what you want to do in the main function, we need to call this greeting function. So we're just going to say greeting, and then I'm going to have the braces, then a semicolon. That's how you call this function. Okay, now if I run this program now, you'll notice that it does exactly what we had before. If I type in my name, Daniel, enter, then we have hello Daniel. You see, so that's basically the function. In this main function, we've basically called the function. Now what I wanted to demonstrate earlier was that you can basically keep calling this function however many times that you want. Like this, I can call this function like 1 billion times, and I don't have to keep rewriting all that code. Now I can say enter your name, I can say Daniel, enter your name again, I can say Frank, enter your name Kim, enter your name Sam, and the end of the program is reached. You see, because I called this function 4 times, it asked me what my name was 4 times. So that's very simple. I hope you guys can understand exactly what's going on in this function. I'm just going to get rid of that because we only need to call it once. So what's basically this is just the essence of functions. Now I want to give you guys another example. Okay, say you wanted to add 2 numbers and you wanted to ask the user to enter 2 numbers. Okay, so I'm going to create variables. Okay, I'm going to create variables here at the top. I'm going to say integer number1 and num2, right? And then I'm gonna okay, so and then underneath the greeting, I'm gonna ask the user to enter 2 numbers. Okay, I'm gonna say cout, please enter 2 numbers, end line. Okay, and then we're going to take in 2 numbers, cin num1 num2, and then we're going to output the sum of the 2 numbers. Okay, I'm going to say cout, and I'm going to say the sum of your 2 numbers is, and I'm going to say num1 plus num2. I'm just gonna make it bigger so you guys can see num1 num2, and then I'm gonna say end line. Okay, now what do you expect to happen? What's basically going to happen in this programming is that this is just declarations. Greeting is going to run first, so this function is going to happen. So it's gonna, the program will start here. It's going to start by asking us what our name is, because of this code is going to be ran. Once this is done executing, then this part of the program will continue executing. That's how functions work. Okay, so let's okay, I made a mistake here at the cin. It's actually num1 and num2, and there's not supposed to be a comma here. It's supposed to be these braces over here. Okay, so just change that if you were copying my code. Now let's run it, and then let's see what happens. It says enter your name. I'm going to say Daniel, and then it says please enter 2 numbers. I'm going to pass in 12, enter, and then I'm going to pass in maybe 1, enter. And then look at that. It says the sum of your 2 numbers is 13. Okay, so that works as expected. Now, so since we're dealing with functions here, I want to demonstrate functions. Same thing, instead of using all this information and having it over all the way here, what if I wanted a simple way of adding 2 numbers together instead of doing everything right here in the cout statement in our main function, which makes our code dirty or ugly to look at? Okay, so I'm going to create a function. Right now, this function, because we're dealing with numbers, I'm going to start it off as int. I'm going to say int, which is integer, and I'm going to say sum, right? So, or actually add, right? Because the function is to add things. And then I'm going to have my braces and then my curly braces, just like how I did with the greeting function. And then inside of this, what I'm going to do is I just want this function to just add 2 numbers together. So what I want I want a little box. This is basically, envision this as a little box. Okay, a little box where you pass in 2 numbers, right? The first number and the second number, and then when you pass in those 2 numbers, you're expecting it to give you the sum of those 2 numbers. Okay, that's all. You give it 2 numbers, and then you expect a sum of those 2 numbers in return. So inside of this braces here, we're gonna pass in the 2 numbers that we want to give it. It's the input. Okay, so I'm gonna say integer num1 and integer num2, like that. And then what operation will this run? It's just gonna sum these 2 numbers together. Okay, so what I can do is that I can just say return num1 plus num2. So basically this function is going to return the addition of these two numbers. Does that make sense? So instead of doing things like this, we can also do it a different way. Maybe you don't understand how return is returning two numbers added together. We can simplify this for you. We can declare another variable inside of here, just like we did with the string name here in the greetings. We can declare another variable called sum. I can say int sum, and I can just leave it like that, and I can just say sum is equals to num1 plus num2, and then I can say return the sum. So basically now the sum, we have a new variable that has nothing to do with the main function. This sum variable now is responsible for adding the first number and the second number, and then we just return the sum. So now what we can do now is that instead of calling this cout statement, instead of having it as num1 plus num2, what we can do is we can actually call the function. We can call the function. So I can just call add over here, have the braces, and then basically I can just leave it like this and run it, and we should get our results. That's actually false, because if you look at this add function, it's actually expecting two numbers to be passed in. Remember, that's the input. So we need to pass in num1 and num2, right, that we get from the user. So let's pass in num1 and num2. I'm going to say num1, num2. Now with num1 and num2, you don't actually have to pass, you don't have to write the types like int when you're calling a function. You don't have to do this. It already knows what the type is because it's already declared over here. Okay, all you have to do is just pass in the two numbers that you want. Okay, and then after that this program should run. So let's just run this, and then let's see what it gets. So enter your name, I'm going to say Daniel, and then enter two numbers. I'm going to say 1, and then the other number I'm going to say 5, enter, and then it says the sum of your two numbers is 6, right? So that's very simple. I'm just going to go through this again. What ended up happening in this program is that in the main function, this is what actually runs, and this is what actually has everything lined up together linearly. Okay, so there's a declaration of the two numbers, and then there's the greeting function that's called. So this code inside of this greeting function will run first. Okay, it runs. Once it's done executing, the program now moves on to whatever the next line is. It prints out this cout statement, and then it runs the cin statement, which collects the two numbers from the user, and then after that this cout statement runs, and then this cout statement happens to have the result of the addition. Now the reason why we have integer here on the add is because this sum variable is an integer, so you can't return any other type, right? You can only return an integer. That's what this int in front of the add means. So for instance, if I were to declare another variable here and said string, and I were to return string, let's just say some name or whatever, and I say the name is Frank, doesn't matter what it is, and I were to return the name here, you'll see something here. It'll say no suitable conversion function for string to int exists. So this is basically not allowed. You can't return a string, whereas you told the function that it's going to return an integer. Okay, so this will not be allowed. And similarly, even if you had a float, like float number, maybe the float's value is number, maybe it's equals to 12, 21 or whatever, doesn't matter. You can't do that if you wanted to return number here, right? Number is the type of a float, and number will not be allowed to be returned. This is a float, so even if it removes the squiggly lines, this is not allowed. Always make sure that you return an integer. Now let me get rid of this. Let me give it back to sum. Okay, now with the void basically means that we're not returning anything. So void statements or void functions basically mean, hey, I'm not returning anything. So remember, with this function, because we're returning a particular type, we need that type to match the name, the type of the actual function. With this function, because we're not returning anything, we leave it as void, meaning we're not returning anything. You can do whatever it is that you want, just don't return anything. The minute you want to return something like return, and then maybe I want to return the name, it's going to give us a problem. It's the same thing, it doesn't match the function type, right? Because if you wanted to return the name, then you would also have to make it a string. You would also have to return a string over here. Sorry, that's the only way that this could possibly happen. But we don't want to do that. We don't want to return anything. We just wanted the function to just output some things, right? We just wanted to run our cout statements. So guys, that's basically the end of this function tutorial. This is the first one. In the next lesson, I'm going to be going through reference parameters, and they are extremely important for you guys to understand. Okay, so please stay tuned for the next video, and the link to the source code, everything that you see here, is linked in the description. And also, if you're on YouTube, please like and subscribe, and if you're on Ivy Brilliance, just leave a comment, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.